Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I am your host, Rex Bear, and tonight's guest is Will Berlinghoff, a gifted individual who has profoundly touched and changed people's lives for over 30 years. With a degree in psychology, practical training in addiction counseling, as well as group therapy and individual counseling. Now, further to this, he has developed a therapeutic approach to doing deep-level counseling that involves working with the subconscious, as well as connecting with the high self spiritual aspect of one's being. This is called Trinary regression therapy. We're going to discuss this and many other things tonight here at the Leak Project. Will, it's an honor to have you on the show with us. I'd like to recommend our users and listeners go to rainbow-phoenix.com to find out more. Will, how the heck are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rex, and doing quite well here on a sunny Australian morning.
Wonderful. You know, I'll tell you, Australia is one place I definitely want to visit, even though it's on the other side of the world and I don't like to fly. That is one place that I would definitely, one of these days, I'm going to go out there and visit and do a walkabout. Let's just put it that way.
That'd be excellent. We actually are living in Western Australia, but get this, we live in a town called Denmark. So
perfect. Is it a very...
people.
Yeah, right. Is it like a... What's it like out there?
Well, you know, I came 4 years ago. I had always been attracted to Australia, but out of the blue, I got a call from this woman in Australia to have a reading, and we got chatting, and of course, that's my beloved wife, Callista, and within a few weeks, it was like, well, how about if we get married?
Oh, that's great.
And I came here, and the rest is history, as they say. Australia is a very interesting land. Coming from Canada, as I do, you know, a northern climate and everything, coming into a country that has a very, very wonderful and moderate temperature as it is here where we live, because the rest of Australia is actually quite warm, as you probably are aware. It has been quite an experience, and adjustment is key to that. But I think the adjustments have been made, and I'm ready to go. I just feel like I'm in the right place, and I followed the instinct and followed the path that brought me here, and that's about all I can say. Here I am.
Well, that's great. Now, how close are you to Perth?
Perth is about just over 400 kilometers, about 300 miles from here. It's about 4 to 5 hour journey to get there by car.
Okay. We had a really cool guest with us, Alan from Prep Aussie YouTube channel. He does a lot of stuff on Planet X and Nibiru. He's out there, and he came on the show. That was really neat. He's got some just amazing footage on his YouTube channel of only anomalies that he's picking up out there in Australia. So he's not showing footage from the U.S. and other places, and that was pretty cool. So I'm certainly fascinated by the culture, the natives, and just many ways of life out there in Australia as well as Canada. Another just total opposites of the world, though, I'm sure, right? You went from one real cold place to a pretty warm climate.
It's a hoot when I talk to my family or friends in Canada, and they're telling me it's 30 below, and it's like almost 30 above here, you know?
Yeah.
It's quite funny when I do that with them. But yeah, it is such a different cultural milieu, climate, all of that. And yet, when you're guided to be wherever you need to be and you trust and you go with that trust, then usually you wind up in the right place at the right time. And that's basically what I feel is the case here, that I'm where I'm supposed to be. So.
And absolutely. I mean, certainly things happen for a reason. It sounds like you met your soulmate and you guys are doing really good. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. What's happened since I came here is the expansion of the work I do, and challenges certainly have come with that, having to let go of other people I've been associated with, and some of that for a long, long time. But the trust element is so important, to really believe that this is what I need to be doing, and it's not because you've figured anything out. It's not working from the right or left hemisphere of the brain. It's coming from the heart, coming from right in here, and then letting the gut support that, So
nice.
It's how I live my life and what brought me here, as I said.
Yeah, that's very cool. And if you would, Will, tell our audience a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do with Rainbow Phoenix, and talk to us about this trinary regression therapy also, if you would.
Good, sure, no problem. Um, the story is a story that I've been on, or the adventure is one I've been on for a very long time. I've had the opportunity to live in other countries like Germany for 8 years and England for 10, and of course Canada and now Australia. But my journey started way back in my 20s when I moved to Germany, and I started to really get involved with spiritual teachings and people like Jane Roberts and the Seth Material, and an organization in America called Cosmic Awareness Communications. And, the journey just always opened up new doors and new moves, and a journey that really involved just going with it. And in that time frame, that's when I was originally introduced to the Huna philosophies, which are based on the high self, middle self, and low self, which I'll elaborate on in a moment, as well as developing my own psychic abilities. And to that end, I actually started to read the tarot cards when I was living in England in the 80s, and became a professional tarot card reader, and that over 30 years itself. And then that led me, I'd already returned back to Canada, and it led me then eventually in 2005 to start channeling cosmic awareness. Now, cosmic awareness is a living consciousness, a collective consciousness, or as it calls itself, a force in consciousness that comes from the 12th level of dimensional realities. That's my understanding. And so it was a bit of a surprise, even though I'd been aware of cosmic awareness for many years, that when I finally did start to channel, it's like, oh my God, here I am. I'm actually experiencing the flow of consciousness that allows me to channel. Well, that was 10 years ago, and it's been a journey ever since then of developing my abilities and capacity to be a channel for cosmic awareness. That is the one major hat I wear. But at the same time, I do have a history, as you pointed out, in the counseling field, and realized a long time ago that we have to involve a spiritual element to counseling that most counselors, psychiatrists, etc. do not employ. In fact, it's almost taboo to talk of a spiritual awareness or understanding, and further to that, to actually insist that it's a living force in our lives that can guide us. That's simply not acceptable in most traditional counseling or psychiatry. But I felt, no, this is the way to go. And so I developed this approach many years ago where I started including these concepts of the high self, middle self, low self. Now, the middle self is you and I, as we identify ourselves. I'm Will Berlinghoff, you're Rex Bear. You have this image and understanding of who that is. But the low self is that part of you that comes from an automatic level. It was first brought in to help the body develop when we're children and everything. It takes in the programming. It is the interface to third dimensionality. And for most people, it's a completely unconscious thing. The best they get is that they know we have some kind of part of our being that's called the subconscious. Now, the subconscious and the low self are one and the same. Okay? And there are approaches that work with trying to get in touch with the unconscious part of yourself, or the subconscious. And so that was very much important for me to be able to access that. But equally, and this is the strand, hence the term trinary instead of binary, the third strand that actually brings in a spiritual awareness, but even more than that, can become a very strong and powerful force of guidance and support and of miracles in our lives that put our lives beyond the realm of that which is a dualistic concept of life to that which involves this trinary or triunal concept of our being, a trinity concept, that we are more than what we think we are. And we've all heard that spoken enough times. But this is actually an approach, the triunal or trinary regression approach, is a way of helping people connect to their low self, their spiritual self, the high self, and then come from a point where you can actually apply it in your everyday third dimensional reality. So that's trinary regression in a nutshell. Okay, I could go on, but I think that's enough. But the two caps that I wear as counselor using trinary regression and as a channeler for a multi-dimensional force, a collective consciousness that calls itself cosmic awareness, are what we really put out and work with on our website and make it available. We have a portion of that website that is for members, people who want to join. There's benefits to joining, including submitting questions to Cosmic Awareness that it answers and puts out, public messages, a forum, a number of other things. But this is what I've been doing over the last 4 years since I got here, working with Callista to develop my business, my abilities, this opportunity to help people look at life in a completely different way, which is absolutely, totally necessary at this time. But it has been a journey, and I think that's what's important. The journey isn't complete when you've achieved this. It's an ongoing journey. And so every day it's like, thank you for the help and assistance that's given through Spirit, and, asking to be attuned to those energies so that you can make the best choices and decisions in a day in alignment with that spiritual guidance, as well as working with that part of your being that actually creates it in a third dimensional reality.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed that you work with a lot of people that have gone through some pretty serious issues, like some people that have maybe been under some type of satanic ritual, mind control type stuff and other things, ritual abuse. Now, how many people would you say that you have worked with? I mean, you don't need to be exact or anything, but have you dealt with a lot of people that have been under these type of satanic ritual abuses and mind control type stuff?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've worked with people in that category. I've worked with people that are just working out how to exist in this life, forget about satanic background. And I think the whole thing about that is to realize it's actually a real force. A lot of people think, no, that's just something that Hollywood produces in the movies that, are there to scare us or whatever. But it certainly is my experience with the dozens of people I've worked with over the many years I've been doing this, that this is an actual thing that has happened to many people. And as long as you don't get drawn into it, as long as you don't give that side of things more power, then it's okay. Then it, then it works out. But if you kind of go into a place where you're, where you're at the effect of what the person's telling you, then you're not effective as a counselor to help someone break free from that kind of programming. Because ultimately, that's really all it is. It's a type of programming. And it's a programming that does very much open you up to these darker elements that are out there, these demonic forces or jinn forces, as some people call them. And to understand that you have to have a belief in that, and by belief in this case, I'm saying a belief that such forces exist, then and only then can you treat them. Modern psychiatry, for example, does not accept that. It holds that that's some kind of delusion, paranoia, schizophrenia, and therefore there is no tolerance to any aspect of a psychiatric approach that would give credence to demons and shadow beings and attachments and everything. That's all delusional. And I have come to the very firm conclusion it is not delusional, not from the work I've done. Past life regression, which is also a very big part of it, is not a myth. It's not some fantasy. Some of the work I've done in that area with Trinary is absolutely fantastic. And to have that bigger perspective on life, to understand that we are talking here from a point of view that has so much more of a capacity to accept a reality beyond that programmed reality we all are trapped into from earliest days on, then that just opens up doors and makes it possible to do even the most extreme work with people, as long as they're willing to let it go. Because that's the biggest thing. You got to break through their programming and then give them the power to make the changes from within. My work is always based on from within yourself. It's not about blaming anyone else. It's not about being a victim. It's about taking total responsibility and saying, yes, I can do something with this. And if that attitude is there, then the work I do with Trinary expression and just common sense talking to people, combining that now with the element of the powerful cosmic awareness energies, provides a real strong way for people to change their lives in the most dramatic of ways.
Now, being able to tap into more of your sixth sense and intuition, throughout your life, have there been times that you've seen or sensed energies that would really frighten somebody if they actually knew it was around them?
Oh, yeah. Many, many, many times. I know that there is an energetic force out there that I'll call shadow beings. This ties into what I've just said, but these ones are out there. They are intradimensional. In other words, these jinn, these demons, supposedly exist in a space between third dimensionality and fourth dimensionality. Incidentally, we are crossing now into fourth dimensionality as the human race more and more all the time. But these beings are out there, these shadow beings. And if you're frightened of them, then you go into the situation that you see portrayed in the movie so much, where they can attack you and they can hurt you and they can hurt your loved ones, they can destroy your life. Now that's just giving them power, because in actuality, if we are truly spiritual beings, we have the power and capacity to dismiss these other forces. But we have to understand that these things exist. We have to understand that they are malevolent. They do not want to help humanity. Now, from the level of the occult, and especially, especially dark magic or black magic or satanic or whatever, these ones who practice this have full awareness of these demonic beings, these forces, these shadow beings, and they employ them all of the time. Now, if you have a Christian programming, a Judaic, a Muslim, Hare Krishna, I don't care what it is, that gives credence to the dark forces as being, in a way, more powerful than any force of spirit or any force of the light, then you will be subject to what they do to you. And part of the work I do is really just helping people understand that they are more powerful than these intrusive forces, these malevolent beings, and that they can dismiss them from their lives. They can bring themselves out of that kind of life. They can break those ties that they have with them. And it's a very important thing to realize. And as I said a moment ago, I've seen it enough times when people have been affected with that level of intrusion, who have broken free and their lives just change. And when you know that you have the power and the capacity to express from the highest level of your being, and that spiritual force is there for you, that just gives you so much freedom. I truly believe, Rex, that we are first and foremost spiritual beings that are having physical lives, physical journeys. And the interesting thing to that is that most of us simply don't know if that's true or not. I mean, the traditional religions, for example, really work on a dualistic premise that there's the dark and there is the light, but the dark evil forces are stronger and we have to battle them and we have to go to war against them. Well, that's really being at war with yourself and not really realizing the capacity you have as a spirit being having this journey to apply to spirit for guidance, assistance, energy to assist you in your life's journey. So it's very important, I feel, to add this new strand. We are in a dualistic reality or a binary reality. And that has a lot to do with the Archons and the AI and what these people have been doing for so long, the powers that be have been doing for so long, to brainwash humanity, to indoctrinate them into certain mindsets and beliefs that keep them prisoners. And if you add that third strand, the trinary element, that will take you out of their game. Because in that game, that binary game of good and evil and right and wrong and whatever, if you battle from that level, you're playing their game. If you take that to a new level and you introduce this spiritual element and you do it in a way that is powerful and effective in your life, then you're not playing their game and they can't control you and they can't dominate you and they can't harm you. So that's another reason why I think it's very important now that humanity wake up to this fact that we're all spirit beings. We all chose to be here. We all chose to have the kind of adventures or misadventures that we have in life so that we can take effective charge of our lives and align ourselves with that spiritual component of our being.
Now, when you say spiritual component, though, I mean, definitely we seem to live in this dualistic universe. You know, I mean, there's got to be an opposite to everything to have some type of reference point, I guess, so we can understand the whole concept. However, when you say we have to have this trinary system and just bring it in from spirit, what exactly does that mean? I mean, are we aligning up all of our chakras and doing some type of medication, or not medication, self-medication, meditation, or, I mean, I'm trying to grasp the concept there, because if you're not using hypnosis, I mean, hypnosis is, everybody's hypnotized somewhat all the time. I mean, whether you're in alpha state or beta state or theta state or whatever, I mean, just depending on your brain levels and frequency. So you don't use any type of conversational hypnosis or anything? I mean, you're just... Talk to us about it. I'm trying to grasp this concept here.
Sure, it's a very important concept to grasp. Let's take it back to the fundamental of a binary way of living your life, where you're given a choice that it's this way or that way. Let us say, for example, with this whole concept of evil and everything, on a binary level, what that means is that you're told that you have to be a good person so that you can countermand the dark side. But the point is this, it's either or. It's either the light wins or the dark wins. And that battle on a binary or dualistic level is always going to be, you're either going to win or you're going to lose. Now, trinary, what trinary offers, first of all, let's imagine you have point A and you have point B. This is binary. You know, it's either A or B, back or forth. But if you put a trinary element to this, there is now a third point of reference, which is C. And let's put it up here, okay? So now it's A, B, C. It's a triangle, okay? But what it also offers is that it's a way of escaping a binary, constricted way of interpreting reality, where you have to do it this way or that will happen to you. It actually employs paradox, because a trinary system says it's not A or B, or it's both A and B. Therefore, it can be simultaneously that something that's a dark event, let's say, can have a light effect on someone. That you can take the worst case scenario of your life and suddenly realize that if you stay in the component of that reality, the makeup of that reality, you're going to stay stuck in that reality. That by giving it this added point of reference, this trinary point, that suddenly it can be this and that. A good event may have ill consequences. A dark event might have good consequences. Those in power, our presidents, our prime ministers, our religious leaders, may be coming from that dark, evil place, but maybe in terms of a context of the bigger picture, actually what they're doing is helping humanity move forward through the kind of challenges that are offered up. So that trinary perspective, that third point of view, takes you out of the game. And if you're not playing the game, then they can't get at you. And they, by that I mean Archons, the Dark Ones, the Illuminati, the Cabal, whatever terms or labels you wish to give it. They work on the assumption that if they keep people ignorant, and they live this binary way of interpreting reality, then they can be controlled. Because if they're dumbed down, asleep, and stupid, then you can convince them about just about anything. But if you move beyond that and you can see things from a different perspective and you know that it has no power or control of it over you unless you let it have that power and control, then that's where you find freedom. And that's where you find your spiritual component and that aspect of your being that lies well beyond the physical, the binary, that which is our normal reality. Okay, does that explain it a bit?
I can understand the trinary aspect of it now more as far as the thought process goes. And when you started to really develop your psychic intuition,
Yeah.
what did you do essentially to build up that sixth sensibility?
Well, first of all, I have to put out that I have always had it. Even as a child, I was sensitive. I wouldn't say I was psychic. I wasn't having abnormal experiences that you hear some have, but I was always sensitive. I always thought there was more to everything. I remember at 13 reading a novel, and in this novel, the premise was that magic is real. It's not just an illusion. It's not simply a sleight of hand. There is such a thing as real magic. And I just resonated with that. It just felt deep within. Yes, that's true. We can do amazing magical things. We can manifest. We can levitate. We can employ telepathy. I mean, I didn't think it all in that moment at 13. I just had this deep awareness that we are more than what we think we are. And over the years, I first started, for example, with tarot. The first tarot deck I ever got was when I was 19. I was at university, found it in the university bookstore, and was like, oh yeah, I just latched onto it. And then taught myself. I never had instructions. Nobody ever came and taught me how to do the tarot. It was something within. And my journey, it's not been a journey that some take where they find an Eastern philosophy or approach where they find meditation and all that. But I definitely did learn how to meditate, but I was never a meditator in the sense I got up at 6 a.m. just so I could greet the dawn and do my meditation and that kind of stuff. I just let life be my teacher and always trusted my instincts. And that trust is what led me to live in Germany for 8 years. And then when it was time to move to England, I moved to England for 10 years. Weird things happened, like my father is German. And when I moved to England, with his cooperation and help, I was able to get a German passport. So I had dual nationality. So suddenly I could live in England without having to get their equivalent of a green card, for example. Or when it was time to leave England, I went back to Canada and had experiences. I knew when I was leaving England that the next phase of my journey was going to be involved with Native American teachings, a shamanic path. I absolutely knew this. I remember flying out of England, returning back home, and as it happened, the plane flew over London, and it was a brilliantly sunny day, something you don't get often in England. And there was London down below, and I'm going, wow, that was the journey I was on, the Celtic journey, being immersed in that culture. And now I'm returning back to Canada to get Native American teachings and shamanic teaching. And I didn't know how that was going to happen. But within 3 weeks of arriving back in Canada, I was introduced to certain people, and I was able to enter a shamanic journey, which I then took for the next 9 years, based on the teachings of the Mayans and the Cherokee. It's a group called the Deer Tribe in the United States, and it's an international one. I studied shamanic teachings, vision quests, sweat lodges. I got a real understanding for a maternal, maternistic concept of reality, Mother Earth. So this is how I've done it. I've just trusted and followed that trust, and it's taken me where I felt I needed to go. And with my work with the tarot, developing as I did, I became a channeler while I was doing the tarot, although I didn't understand it for the longest time. I didn't just go, oh, the card means this, and this devil card means that, and the death card, whoa, the death card. No, I began to develop my intuitive capacity to understand. I expanded my senses to include the low self, the middle self, and beyond. And that's the course of my study. I can't say, oh yeah, well, if you go and meditate every day, 3 times a day, and you don't eat any meat, and then you do this and do that, that'll make you a much more spiritually aware person. No, that was not my approach. It was more an intuitive, easygoing journey that sometimes required me to jump, and I jumped. That's perhaps the biggest thing in my life. I have always jumped when it was time to jump. Even though sometimes it was like, oh my God, do I actually want to move to Australia? Give up my family, my friends, my lifestyle? And everything in me said, yes, you do it now because now is the right time. And I did it. I did it. Bang. So that's kind of been how I've done it. And I would always advocate to people, trust your instincts, trust your gut, trust that element that goes beyond description. Okay, maybe in a rational, logical world, that approach is frowned upon because you're supposed to order and structure your world based on the templates you're given of to how to proceed. But if you sometimes move beyond those templates and you take that formative leap, that amazing jump, that leap of faith, as it's often called, it will usually see you right. You'll usually wind up in the right place at the right time with the right person or people to augment the journey further.
Well, that's great. And when you do these sweat lodges, Will, for somebody that might want to do something like that, do oftentimes they have visions, or do they just get really hot and like, man, I'm ready to go get a nice cold drink now?
Yeah. Well, you see, the purpose of sweat lodges, and interestingly enough, the group I was with, they did alchemical sweats. What that means is they didn't just pump tons and tons of hot stones into the pit and throw water on it. That's an approach that is often used by Native Americans because both approaches actually move you beyond your comfort zone. They put you in a space of distress. I'll use that word for a moment, where it's possible for you to have other experiences. It's possible to open up to a spiritual element as you pray, as you connect with those forces in consciousness that are being applied to when you're doing a sweat. And I have great respect for the Native American type sweat. I've never done that kind of power sweat where it's based on lots of stones and lots of heat. But I have done the alchemical sweats, which are very, very powerful in their own way. And each sweat is so different. One thing it does give you is the opportunity to pray to that level of your own being or spirit that can help you make these jumps I'm talking about, that can help you shift your consciousness. Now, it can be done with extreme heat because it puts you out of your comfort zone. It can be done in this alchemical way, but both are effective as a way of shifting you. And that's, I think, the power of sweat lodges. Now, I haven't done one since I came here to Australia, because that part of my life, I lived that for 9 years, and then I knew it was time to step out. I wasn't prepared to go further with that shamanic journey because something inside me said, no, that's good, you've got the background now, but your journey lies elsewhere. And I left that group and proceeded on my own path. But for those who choose to have experiences with sweat lodges or a vision quest, which is very powerful, that I think is all part of their own individual journey. And each person will feel inclined towards it or disinclined towards it. And to just, again, trust, if that's something that speaks to you, there's definitely groups out there that you can find and partake in sweat lodges and things like that.
Now, also, when you say shaman, and I've talked to people that, you know, have studied shamanism, but I've never had a chance to actually meet a native shaman or somebody that was actually given that title by their tribe or their people because it's who they were, not because what they studied for. Have you met like native shamans? And if you have, what's it like? And you yourself, have you gone on journeys with them or yourself personally to other dimensions and realities through these vision quests or through the mind?
The quick answer is that no, I haven't met a Native American shaman or Aboriginal shaman. The group that I was involved were the rainbow people, in a way that there's incorporated many backgrounds. So it would incorporate the Native American most certainly, but it would also incorporate elements of the Eastern philosophies, for example. And by saying it was the rainbow people, the Métis rainbow people, that means it's open to all, because the people of Turtle Island, which is North America, are a mix of all races. And there has been tension amongst the American Indian movement, for example, to giving out their teachings to the white people and all that. Now, the council, the Nagual councils who are behind such things, I'm talking on a greater scale. Castaneda was part of that, for example, and several others, Don Juan, things like that, people like that. Their philosophy was that it's time for North America, Turtle Island, to become the rainbow people. And that, of course, extends globally. And when you work it from that tradition, it's not that I ever had a teacher like Castaneda did with Don Juan, but it's the teachings themselves that came through that group that were powerful. And yes, they allowed me to have many experiences, some of them very strange and weird. But mostly the journey of a vision quest is to find your own vision, to find your own understanding. And therefore, any shaman cannot do that for you, but he can put you on the path of it. He can send you out on a vision quest. But in the end, it's yours. And if you are open to the experience, then you can have these supernatural experiences. But if you're closed to it, even if you go on a vision quest, you'll probably just spend, a night in the dark and freezing and being very uncomfortable. But if you're open to the experience, and if you're open now, I'm going to bring my kind of philosophy here, the Huna-based philosophy, to the fact that you are on a journey in life to discover your spiritual aspect, to link to the high self, but even more so to link to that part of your being that helps you manifest in this third dimensional reality. Then you will find that all of life is a shamanic journey or a vision quest journey. Because then any and everything that happens to you is the way that you can learn, is the way that you can break through, and is the way of spiritual advancement. And it's not just going on a vision quest. I have great respect for vision quests. I've been on several in my life, but I haven't done a vision quest in the last 8 years because my journey changed and went in new directions, actually 9 years now. And I don't do vision quests anymore. Don't need to, because the vision quest I'm on is called life. And every day is a journey.
It is a journey, and it seems like a lot more people are starting to wake up, Will, and become aware of their surroundings more than just, like you said, this binary system. And I often find it so interesting with what the media does to the masses by either really just pissing you off or, by just making you feel inferior because of what they're showing. And you're like, wow, how can everybody not see this? Yet everybody does see it, and they're thinking the same thing, And so, but the media knows that, and that's how they spin it. So it's like they'll try and divide you, whether it's the race card, the religion card, the, what your sexual preference is, what politician you want to vote for, what book you like, what sports team you like, whatever this duality that we're talking about here. And it seems to me that these people at the top levels or in the upper echelons seem to know how to stir the pot. So you brought up the Archons, and I've always been fascinated with what the old Nag Hammadi treaties and some of these ancient texts discuss with the Archons. How well versed are you on the Archons?
Very, very versed. Very versed. What would you like to know about them?
I would like to know everything. Let's dive into that. What do you feel the Archons actually are, and how do you feel they make an impact on society today?
Well, first of all, for that whole thing, you have to accept that there is perhaps a force in consciousness out there that is malevolent to us, that does not want humanity to progress, wants to control it, dominate it, feed off of it. All of the satanic stuff that we started talking about, that's really an expression of the Archons. The vampiric way that they feed off of human energy, human life force, that nurtures them. Why does that nurture them? Because it is my belief, if you go through the Nag Hammadi text and everything, that when Sophia, the feminine principle, decided that she wanted to take matters in her own hands and create her own group or whatever you want to call it, that she inadvertently created these ones that we now call the Archons. And that's the Gnostic terminology for them, versus the Aeons, which were the ones that were soul connected. Now, to me, soul is very important here, because soul means that we have direct contact to divine source, ultimate source, infinite Godhead, whatever you want to call it. But the Archons, because of the way that this force that is known as Sophia did it, they kind of were created outside of that. They don't have that connection to the essential life force of all, which is divine source, the God force, whatever you want to call it. And they were and have been and are jealous of all those who have that connection. And, you could go on for a long time trying to explain how they got here, but basically they arrived here on Earth. Humans became their target. There were those who were working with the Archons, those who were humans who sold their soul to the devil so that they could gain and prosper, who were willing to sell out their fellow human beings. And those ones are the ones that are mostly in power now. Our prime ministers, our presidents, whoever the leaders are, corporations, all of that. You can see how their intent is to cause harm, control, and manipulate, and at the same time suck the very life force, or the loosh energy, Loosh, I think it's spelled, which is life force energy, so they can survive. And think of it this way. Because the archonic forces are not gaining directly from a soul connection to divine source, they need something to live on. And the way they do it is in this vampiric way, where they suck it out through rituals like the satanic rituals, through things like wars, through things like accidents and events on a major level of things that are very, very hard. Tornadoes hitting a community, for example, that causes a lot of fear, anxiety. But mostly, they have to keep humanity dumbed down, ignorant, and stupid, so that they can apply to humanity a constant level of fear, anxiety, hopelessness, despair. I could go on. And that's what's happening right now. Right now, this is one of the most crucial times of human history, because we are at a turning point. Most people don't realize what an extremely important point we're at right now, how critical and crucial it is right now. And these ones do. And therefore, the Archons and all of their minions, all of their servants, are trying very hard to keep humanity asleep, keep humanity ignorant. Because as long as they do that, they control. As long as they control, they can feed off of us. And that is why, at this time in particular, when fear and, well, some call it fear porn, is so rife, and all these false flag events are happening to shepherd humanity in this way or that direction, so that they can continue to control. So they manufacture wars, they manufacture economic crisis, they manufacture overall fear and anxiety of a common person, so that they have to look to someone like Donald Trump because he's going to be their savior. Instead of realizing, wait a minute, I don't have to fall for that. And that is what's happening. That's what you have just mentioned, how people are waking up. They're starting to say, this can't be right. But they don't always know what to do about it. More and more people are saying, this is wrong. More and more people are starting to ask questions. And luckily, there are also more and more of us who are spiritually aware now, who are there to give some kind of answer, guidance, assistance to waking up further, to truly exploring the possibility that you are a spirit being having this amazing journey, and that all those outside forces that have controlled and manipulated, you can step beyond them. You can step beyond them because you step into your spiritual capacity, that trinary point of view. And that's where, again, as I said earlier, freedom lies. And that's where growth and development, and your life becomes a miracle, and it becomes magical, and it becomes an adventure. But as long as you stay in the negative energies of belief that are imposed on us, we are brainwashed right from the earliest point on. I would say right from the moment of our conception, our birth, we are brainwashed. You have heard of people who are MyLab victims and things like that, and that's the type of brainwashing. Okay? But that's just one level. All of humanity is brainwashed to some degree, and I hate to say it, the ones that are the most conditioned are the North Americans and the Western nations, okay? And America, unfortunately, I sense and feel, is at the very top of that list. That's why America is right now in such turmoil. People are in absolute angst and fear for their lives. And it's not because there's some danger present right in front of them that they can do, but it's because there's this general ominous cloud that lies over them. And then they're caused to be afraid of such things as terrorists and Zika virus and collapse in the economy. We're living in such fear and angst right now that most of us just don't even know which way to turn. And so we submit to what they're telling us is reality. We submit to the myths and the propaganda and the bullshit. And we live our lives thinking, oh, if I do this, if I'm sick, I'll go running to the doctor and he'll give me medicine and he'll cure me. But they won't look at the fact that most doctors' allopathic tradition is based on synthetic medicine, which has no life force, which has no real capacity, can harm more than help. But if you have a belief that the doctors are your friends and they're going to help you that way, then you're going to run to them. And this across the board. This is only one example of how we put our trust in the wrong place and in the wrong people. So there's really actually a great responsibility in waking up and asking these questions and seeing what you can do about it in your life.
You know, and another thing too is I just want to add to what you said. I have a close friend that was in the military and went through a lot of PTSD out of the military. And now this person, you know, basically their comfort would be food. So they just ate themselves to the point of pretty bad shape. And now, you know, every time they would go to the doctor, instead of the doctor saying, oh, well, you know, maybe you should just eat less, the doctor would say, oh, well, let me give you this new pill. And now the person that I'm referring to is in really bad shape. I think they're on, they said 12 different medications, and they're in the worst shape that they've ever been in. And then this person told me, well, if I don't take these medications, the doctor said I'm going to die. And I'm thinking in my head, well, I think these medications are what is going to cause you to possibly die, in my opinion, is what I'm thinking. And so what does somebody like that do that's in dire straits? The doctor's saying you got to take all these synthetic drugs or you're going to die, and that person's ended up means sicker because of it.
Well, that's a wonderful example to bring forward, and what your friend would have to do, what anyone would have to do. And bear in mind, I'm not a doctor. I make no prescriptions to what you must do. That's choice. That's always choice. But what I would suggest is that, first of all, he look at the premises of his belief that the doctor is the authority and expert, and that that type of way of living is not necessarily the best way of living. You've heard of Ty Bollinger, have you not?
Oh, yeah. I talked to him a couple years ago, and we'll hopefully get him on the show here at the League Project. Great guy.
Right. He's a great guy. But look at the amount of information he's brought on that whole global thing, the cure for cancer. It provides people a completely different way of looking at it. So when you have people like Ty Bollinger and the many others who are out there who are unfortunately targets right now to the powers that be, and think about that. Why are these people who are providing alternative cures being killed off? Because they've got something that works. Now, the system doesn't want to allow that. Moving back to your friend, he would have to actually question the system he's in. He would actually have to say, I am going to try an alternative approach, natural products or energy work or something like that. he would have to step out of the framework of belief that he holds in medicine and the power of medicine and the practitioners of modern allopathic medicine. And unless he does that, then I'm afraid he's there to have the experience of what it is to subscribe and to pay attention and follow the dictates of an allopathic practitioner who's saying you've got to have this drug and then you've got to have this drug. Isn't it an absurdity that we have to have drugs not for the condition we're experiencing, but to countermand and go against the effects that a medicine is having? Half of the medicine he's taking is to make sure the other medicine he's taking isn't going to harm him and to control it. Now, isn't that an absurd way of being?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just look at these commercials out there nowadays, folks. Watch any commercial that Big Pharma goes and throws out during one of your favorite TV shows or films or halftime report of a football game, whatever. Yeah. There's more side effects every single time I see one of these commercials. I saw one the other day where this lady comes out and the music's all sad and, you know, she's walking around and she's like, oh, I'm depressed and I don't know if I'm going to be okay. And you can hear in the background the narrator's like, oh, are you depressed? And are you taking medication and it's not working good enough for your depression? Well, this medication might work for your depression, but you might want to kill yourself more after taking it, and it's probably not going to work. However, we would recommend taking it if you might be depressed. And people are like, oh, yeah, and look at how happy that person looks now, and the music's good, and she's dancing around. Oh, I want to go see my doctor right now.
Exactly. I was having a discussion with Callista, my wife, the other day about that very thing. I was saying, because here in Australia, they don't have those kind of commercials. They don't advertise pharmaceutical drugs or anything. Over the counter, some of that, but not the big prescribed types that you get advertised in America. And I said, you know, it's actually hilarious to watch such a commercial because here they're telling you of all these horrendous side effects. But at the same time, then they're, putting on the beautiful music and the beautiful people with smiles on their face because their doctor has given them whatever medicine he's given them.
They can do whatever they want now, Will. They're superheroes now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I just had to add that, man. It's just crazy. It's crazy. People believe it, I mean, they're like sheep.
Absolutely. But you know what? People believe all manner of crazy shit. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing of being mind controlled. That you believe the shit they're telling you. And there's no other alternative but that. And as you buy into that, that's how they enslave humanity, folks. That's how they pull us down and throttle us. Because we let them. We buy into their bullshit. And, when I say that, I am fully aware that we're all in that position that we start off and we learn from our parents, we learn from our school educational system, we learn from our community that this is how to be if you want to consider yourself normal. I know that many people think, oh yeah, I want to have a spectacular life and I'm going to rise up to a point of my own capacity and power to be this great person. But a lot of that's fantasy because they actually don't give you a true way to do that. No, you're supposed to do it the way they told you to do it. Hard work. How about this one? If you work hard all of your life, you might scrape enough together so that by the time you hit retirement, you can retire and finally have that good life you've worked so hard for. That is straight programming. That is mind control. If you don't do that, you're going to live in scarcity. And if you don't do this, you're going to suffer when you're, let's say, 65 or whenever your retirement age is in whatever country you're in. But you don't live in the moment. This is the point. They have taken us away from living in the moment to extending our thoughts to a future moment that we have to prepare for. And in the meanwhile, the only way to do it is work hard, save, and be a good little peasant. Okay? And if you do that, then you'll be rewarded. So how come it is that so many get to that place of retirement thinking, now I'm set, and bingo, something happens, they lose their retirement, the company that paid into their pension fund squandered it in some illegitimate transaction or whatever. All of this hard work has gone down the tube, and then they're victims. Oh my God, they did this to me. Well, I think what I support the most is that none of us are victims. None of us. All of us have chosen those events and circumstances of our life. And if you start looking at it from a different point of view, then maybe it can be a gateway of opportunity to free yourself. For an example, I like using examples. For example, you walk into work one day and they tell you, okay, get your stuff, you're fired. And then they frog march you out of the office in complete embarrassment. Everyone's watching this horrendous event. You're feeling crap. You go home and your life is just broken apart, you know? That which was the way of earning a living and assuring that you could pay bills and take care of things is gone. Now, you have two choices. You can either say, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, it'll never be the same, the economy's horrible, I'll never get another job, and then you go down that path. Or you can say, hey, you know what? I've always wanted to try to do my own business. So maybe this is the opportunity to do it. And then you go forward and you do it, and it's a success or it isn't, depending on what your requirements are for the experience. But let's say we move 5 years into the future from that event where you got frog marched out of the office. How many can look back and say, oh my God, that was the turning point in my life. When that horrible day happened to me, I thought my life was over. But actually, it was just beginning. It really depends on what you're going to do with it. And if you can see that all of the opportunities of our life, good and bad, are opportunities for growth and development, that puts such a different spin on things that your life literally changes, can change instantly on one event that when it was experienced was felt to be the worst day of my life, the worst thing that could ever have happened to me. But if you're not open to that, and if you're only going to look at yourself as a victim, then it's the worst day of your life and it spins you down and down and down into a dark abyss. And then you go to the doctors because now you need antidepressants and now you need this and then you get spun in that direction too.
Right, and it really seems like you talk about this feeding of this dark ecstasy that these Archons tend to have, like it's a gourmet buffet for them. And
Yeah.
I've my intuition has told me before, because I've seen people fight, and I notice things around me that probably a lot of people don't. And I've thought to myself, man, what is causing that behind the scenes? Why is America in this perpetual war system? It's like this beast machine that's constantly looking for battles and proxy wars and different enemies so that these organizations can profit. And instead of making money off of helping people, which money's a good thing, folks. I don't think there's anything wrong with making good money. I mean, if you have millions of dollars, good for you. I think that that's fantastic. It's what we do with our money and how we earn it, in my opinion, that is what's most important. So with the kind of work that you're doing, helping people get out of this binary system and start to understand the true self, the spirit, not these modalities. I would like to jump back to the Archons for a minute because you said you do know so much about them. And I've read the Nag Hammadi treaties. I know about the different archetypes and the Archons and Yaldabaoth and the whole story of why they created man, etc. But I don't know if I believe it or how much of it I think is just symbols, etc. So these Archons, have they been around since before we have? Are they just spiritual? Are they just artificial intelligence? I mean, what exactly is the Archon archetype?
Well, first of all, they have been around for an awfully long time, certainly before the beginning of modern humanity. We have to understand that even the story of the human race has many, many episodes to it. And we're just experiencing that which is the most recent. In the Hopi tradition, they're holding that the fourth world is coming to conclusion and the fifth world is about to begin, which means that there's been 4 other occasions where humanity has been here and things have been done. Well, I would say of the Archons, because I don't know 100%, I would say that they were here from the beginning of this most recent experiment in human consciousness. And that would make it millions of years, okay? And certainly over the last 250,000 years, when the Orions and the Reptilians and the Anunnaki arrived, they've certainly been the big players, because I think all of those ones are servant to the Archons. AI, artificial intelligence, is a way for the Archons to breach the gap between their non-corporeal existence, because they're not in the physical, and breaching the physical. That's why technology has now taken such a leap, and how it is that many believe technology is the way of the future, who are even willing to put implants in them and to become transhuman so that they can lock in and be loaded into the matrix of technology, AI. Now, saying all of that, what if it is that really what they are seeking the most is just to survive? And they don't have that spark of connection to Great Spirit or divine consciousness, whatever you would call it, divine source, I don't care what you call it. So they have to feed off of those who have that energy, that spark. That's the loosh energy I mentioned earlier. They are, in a sense, forced to do that. And because they have to feed off of it, they must maintain not a creative plan for humanity, but one that is always based on destruction, which is why they are always the ones behind the wars. If you look at all armed conflict all throughout history, there's usually those who would benefit from it. Primarily in later stages, like from the 1700s on in particular, where you have the formation of the Rothschilds, and later on in American history, the Rockefellers, the Illuminati families, all of these ones, they have always traditionally been behind the conflicts because they would gain from it. But if you go even deeper, that's where you see the manipulation is at that level, not physical, but non-corporeal, non-physical, the level of the Archons. And as you begin to understand that, you also understand you can choose to be part of that, or you can choose to see it differently, to see and understand that maybe these ones have had such control, but that's because they have manipulated and controlled the mind, the human spirit, for so long. Now, another thing that I could put out here, what is happening, folks, is that when we come into the physical, we go through a process where we come into that physical form. But our expanded form, that is our spiritual form, which is so immense, had to go through gateways, and the final gateway is coming onto this physical plane, is that which is called the veil of forgetfulness. So we are born into this reality, and we don't remember who and what we really are. And because we don't remember, and they do know, that gives them the advantage in the sense that they'll keep us dumbed down. They'll keep us asleep and ignorant. And that's where they have the control. And then they can, manipulate us to wars and poverty and all of that, and at the same time feed off of us, because that's the only way they survive. And the satanic groups and rituals, one of the things that is pronounced with what their rituals are about is the induction of great levels of terror, fear, and pain. And so that the person on the table, on the altar, that is being, where horrible things are being done to that person, that releases this life force. And these people, and I'm talking about humans also that are involved in it, are actually getting high on it. And it's feeding this archonic force. Now, most people, if they hear me saying this and have never heard about this kind of stuff, or they hear you talking about it, Rex, most people just can't accept that. That is just too much. This guy is off his rocker. But how else would you explain the insanity that we're living in right now? I mean, let's face it. We're accepting things that are so insane, and we're calling it all normal. It's all right to walk around with a gun in your pocket, and when a 17-year-old youth comes forward and you shoot them and then you're freed. We're talking about, what's his name, Zimmerman or whatever his name is, and Trevon and that. And this is accepted. It's like, oh, well, it's a weird world out there. It is not acceptable. That level of violence and things that is now the norm is not acceptable unless you accept it. And that's the point of it. That's why they keep us in such fear, such oppression right now, to keep us in a fear state. You know that there is that principle called fight or flight. If you have a grizzly bear standing in front of you, your best response might be to back up and get the hell out of there as quickly as possible. But if you have an unnamed fear that is constant, now it's the fear of terrorists, it's the fear of economic collapse, it's the fear of violence if you go out into the street at night. You could go on and on and on and on. Zika, my God, isn't that an amazing thing? They're making you fearful of a thing that's been around, an effect of being bitten by mosquitoes, which is flus and things. They have promoted it into a big scare thing. But
let me jump in real quick on that, Will, if I can. Sure. You brought up the Zika virus, and there was even a huge global pandemic warning on this main website for emergencies that are global, and they were, you're right, this whole freak people out so they'll buy vaccines that'll make them sicker. I mean, you remember the whole swine flu hoax. Well, you probably don't remember that much because you weren't in America, but I was watching these guys on the mainstream news push these vaccines, and they reminded me of timeshare salesmen. I thought they were going to try and sell me some timeshare, and I'm just like, okay. He's like, yeah, all you got to do is take this vaccine. You'll be great. Everything's wonderful. Try it. Exactly. And you'll get a 10% discount at the drugstore when you get your vaccine. Exactly. 10% off.
I was in Canada, and we were also affected by the swine flu, H1N1, and which I always thought was funny. If you just take it as H1, a stroke, N1, that's Heine. And we know what a Heine is, don't we?
Nice.
Okay, but the point is, at that time, I was channeling awareness already, and it very much said, do not take their vaccinations because they actually had nanotechnology implanted in it. And it actually is a kill switch in the event that if ever they needed to wipe out a lot of people who are rising up, they just hit the switch. But what is interesting is actually, I don't know quite how it was in the States, but I do know in Canada, more people did not go for the vaccination than did go for it. Of course, you had many, and they made the news every night when you saw these lineups of thousands of people wanting their injection. But the truth is that more people did not go for the injection because they had this mistrust. And another thing they never tell you is more people died and suffered from the bloody vaccination than actually who died from the swine flu itself.
Oh, that's a conspiracy.
Yeah, that's a conspiracy. Say that. That's conspiracy.
You know I'm joking, right?
I know you are. I get you 100% because that's what they do. Oh, that's a conspiracy. He's a conspiracy nutter. And just in saying that, it dismisses the whole argument that someone might be making that has truth to it because they're a conspiracy nut. That's how wonderfully refined they are in their control of us.
It's certainly amazing to try and have, a conversation about things that are outside of the typical 9-to-5 office chat. Whether it's sports or some type of reality TV show. It's really sad because ever since Survivor came out many years ago, that reality TV, I think that kind of really set this forest fire, and now 75% of the TV shows out there are some form of reality vomit. And there's a couple of them out there that are okay if, I can maybe stand 5 minutes of, but, it would be nice to see the overall essence of our planet really go back to a society that thinks for themselves and doesn't just focus on somebody with the title or a label. Like you talked about doctors earlier, people will trust anything as long as they've got a white jacket on and a sticker that says they're a doctor.
Or they have letters behind their name,
Yeah, exactly.
But the interesting thing is that we are at a turning point. Coming from the channeling I do of cosmic awareness, this force, this collective consciousness that is from a high level, it has expressed that this is a most crucial and critical point because humanity is ready to shift. But think of it this way, perhaps, Rex. We're in a river, and let's say it's the Mississippi, this big, broad river that just seems totally in its power and its might. It's so big. But what if suddenly there's a little tributary that starts to develop? And at first, some of the flow of that river kind of breaks down a bit and breaks down a bit, and then it breaks through, and then suddenly there's a little bit of a rush, and then there's an earthquake, and suddenly the flow of the big river is being shifted, and now the tributary is getting bigger and bigger. And I think that's one way we can imagine what's happening. We're at the very beginning stages of forming a new tributary of consciousness. It's not going to seem at first like much is happening because that big old river is flowing along and you can't change that. But it is changing. The force of spirit itself, divine source itself, is now coming through unlike anything it's been so for a long time. And this actually started on December 21st, 2012. That wonderful day of ascension that so many of the New Agers thought was going to end the old world, and miraculously and instantaneously we're going to be in this wonderful utopia. Well, that utopia didn't happen. But what did happen is a door was opened, and divine source spirit started to flow through it. And I can say from that time on, in the 4 years since then, that I have seen a huge expansion in the people who are asking questions, who are seeking, who want to find some new answers for themselves. And that encourages me. Okay, we may be at the beginning of the formation of this tributary of consciousness, but the important thing is we are there, and it is happening. And if you can grab hold of that, and in trust and faith, hold this is the truth of your life, forget what your neighbor thinks or the people down the road, but the beginning of your life, then your life begins to change. And as more and more people have this experience that they're changing their lives, others who are ready will start to see this and will ask them, what the hell are you doing that's making such a difference? How come you're happy? How come you're free? I want that. And that only happens when you deal with yourself. This is the point. It's not something that's going to happen out there. Many people are fence straddlers. Many people are looking for the event out there. They're looking for disclosure. You know, Stephen Greer, I heard him on Coast to Coast the other day. Oh yeah, and he's this and that. And people are waiting for the government to disclose what's been happening. But actually, disclosure begins in yourself. And if you understand those UFOs are out there, and there are extraterrestrial beings who are interacting with humanity, both obviously and directly and indirectly and hidden. But it is happening. And as you open your mind and as you make your higher connections, that is what will guide you into a new reality. Because you are a creator being. Each and every one of us is a creator being. We create through the beliefs we hold. And if those beliefs are negative and hostile, and we believe that this is a hostile planet and everything about it is, what's the saying? You know, pain and suffering. You know, you're born, you suffer, you die. Wow. What a formula. But if we can say we're born, we expand, we grow, we learn, and then we move on, that's a different concept. And as we move into the expanded consciousness that we are capable of tuning to, and that's why, again, I think an approach like Trinary, where you're actually connecting both to that high spiritual source as well as to the part of you, the subconscious, that manifests on this third dimensional reality, that as we move into that way of understanding and participating in the world with that worldview, then everything begins to change. But you can't be a fence straddler. You can't wait for it to happen out there first before I do anything. You have to say, I'm going to do something for myself first. And then the outside begins to change. because it has to. It has to change to accommodate your beliefs, your understanding, your truth, and not the other way around.
And have you also ever done any work with the Tree of Life, referring to the different chakras and the...
Absolutely, yes, yes. The chakra system is a very interesting system. Of course, it's from the Sanskrit word and from the old ancient teachings of such things that identifies that we have at least 7 chakra points on the body, right from the base to the crown. And I work with that regularly. It's also, it can be very easily incorporated into the work I do with trinary regression, because when we understand that these are vortexes of energy that spin and that there's closed down, blocked down, then we're going to be affected. For example, if the sacral chakra is closed down, that's the second from the bottom. That's a lot of your emotional energy, your sexual energies. And if that's all blocked, then you're probably going to have some big problems in expressing yourself, being open to a true nurturing sexuality. And you know, I can definitely work with people when they're having those kind of problems. It's all within the context of the work I do.
Absolutely. And then, so have you ever actually had your Kundalini, I think it's referenced as, activated? And if so, what was it like?
Well, I have had my own experiences of what I think is the activation of the Kundalini. And, you know, you hear some reports of the Kundalini being activated when a person's not ready, and this red-hot poker going up their spine and just burning them out. And I've never had that kind of experience, luckily. But I have had experiences of energy rushes coming up the spine and heat with that. And it's a very natural experience. As you advance your concept and understanding of what you are energetically, then when you come into that stage of an experience where the Kundalini or the life force, because Kundalini, of course, is another word for life force, happens, that it's not necessarily overwhelming to you. It's not necessarily a negative because you're ready for it. It is that energy flow that moves you into a heightened awareness because we expand beyond just the trap of third dimensionality, thinking that's all there is, just the physical and only the physical, into a realm where we work from a conscious level of mental, emotional, and spiritual. And this becomes an absolutely different way of living one's life. So the Kundalini, as far as I see it, and there are many, many exercises to prepare yourself, some fine Eastern traditions that work with the Kundalini. But on the whole, I think the important thing is to understand this is the energy flow that comes through our body when our chakras are aligned, opened, and functioning. It can flow, and when they're closed down, that's when you get blocks. That when you try to raise that energy, it actually can be a kind of negative experience.
You know, another thing, too, that I was hoping we can talk about, Will, is this Planet X phenomena has really taken things by storm, I've noticed. And I've heard about Planet X for years. I mean, I know that it was supposed to come around in 2003 and cause mass chaos, and then it was 2008, then it was 2012, then 2013. And I am not the kind of person that thinks it's going to be an extinction level event. If it even is real, I'm still pretty agnostic on it, although I've seen some really good footage. But one of the things that makes me feel Planet X might be real more than anything else, as I've told people many times before here on the Leak Project, is just all the darn trolls out there that don't seem like your typical keyboard warrior, more like somebody that's very good with psychology and knows how to use certain verbiages to create certain reactions out of people. They kind of like sit there behind the shadows watching what people's comments are so they know when to strike. And so what is your take on Planet X? And if you have had any type of contact with entities that have given you information on that subject, that'd be great to talk about.
Sure. Well, first of all, I first heard about Planet X Nibiru in the 1980s. I read the Zecharia Sitchin books back then. And so I've been aware of Nibiru, Planet X, for a long time. And like you, I've just seen and heard many different reports and this and that, and it was supposed to be here 2003 or whenever. I think the best thing to say is that I've always been open to it. I never have said it must be, will be, but I've been certainly prepared for it. And there has been evidence, to me, very, very strong evidence that such a planet has intruded in our solar system many times in the past, has been responsible for certain Earth extinction events, such as the biblical flood. I do think that was much to do with the passage of Nibiru close by. And Zachariah Sitchin does talk about that in one of his books. I read them all. And the point around that is there is historical evidence on the planet right now that support that there were races on this planet who may have come from the planet Nibiru, the Anunnaki, as we have heard of them, had people in Africa hundreds of thousands of years ago in order to do their mining. And they are finding all kinds of ruined places, ruins and mines and everything that have shown and do prove that there were people there. And there was a race there that was using the blacks or the people of Africa as their slaves. So that's just one little example. I am aware, my source of consciousness, that is cosmic awareness, has said that yes, there is the planet Nibiru, and it has been coming into our solar system. More recently, Alex Collier has brought out some information that placed Nibiru at the farther reaches of our solar system. It is supposedly the case that there were these extraterrestrial beings called the benevolent ones, I think they're called, who actually negotiated a stoppage of the planet's progress because the way that the planet was approaching, Nibiru was approaching, that it would come very close to Earth at a crucial time and would wipe out basically most of the population on the planet's surface, which is one reason why the powers that be have been frantic in creating underground bases and cities and tunnels that they can travel through from one to the other. And this is true. This is not speculation. It's not fantasy. This is actual. And you've heard of, I'm sure, had guests on your program who've talked about that. So they believe something is out there. But my understanding, as Alexander Collier has said, is that it has been stopped in its tracks, so it will not coincide with the earthly orbit at a certain point that could cause such damage. And furthermore, the latest is that what Alex Collier said is that the benevolents have gone in and they've been pounding down into dust the large bits of debris in the debris field. And that was also a big danger, that big chunks of debris would hit planet Earth and cause great damage. Now, you can believe it or not. It doesn't really matter to me. I am open to it, and I trust and feel there's correctness there. And when I checked it out through my own source, Cosmic Awareness did confirm this to be so. And that helps me understand that there are these forces that are benevolent to us, that are the ETs, if you want to call them that are working for us behind the scenes. They haven't stepped out and landed on the front lawn of the White House and said, here we are, folks. But they are there. They are assisting. So I do believe in Nibiru. I do believe that there is a planet that comes into our solar system every 3,600 years odd, and that this is an event that's underway right now, but that it's not an event that will lead to a world extinction event. So I'm in agreement with you. I don't believe that it's going to lead to world extinction. But I also believe that there is a spiritual force behind it all. And that spiritual force, although unseen, is the very force that I am saying we can hook into and connect to, that can help us through these times. Because if it is, Rex, a situation that people are just beset by all these fears, and they're not even fears they can grab hold of, and they're just bombarded every day, there must be a way of countermanding that. There must be a way of getting beyond that. And I think by raising our consciousness to a new level of perception that says hey, I'm spirit. As a spiritual being, I am not a victim. I can move into a place of manifesting my timeline of reality that will suit me. And I don't want to have a timeline where I live on such an insane planet any longer, but that the planet opens up, that humans start to realize truths about themselves. And that is why I am so driven to share with many this new concept, this trinary concept, that allows them no longer to be victims to a binary system, trapped in such a system that is controlled by the Archons, the AIs, the Rothschilds, whomever, but one that puts you into a new state of realization of who and what you really are, a spirit being having a physical journey, and that it's a wondrous journey, it's an amazing journey if we can open up to that.
Now, I was doing some research before we had the opportunity to speak today, and
Sure.
I found an interview that you did a while ago, actually back in March, I think, where you talk about some false flags that might be happening here this year, next year, or soon. And I was wondering if you could tell us about those and where you got the information.
Well, a lot of that information is channeled. Okay, a lot of it comes through my source, cosmic awareness. And what I have the ability to do is to simply let that information flow. I don't judge the information that I'm channeling or that I'm bringing through. I just allow awareness to speak that. And therefore, a lot of that information comes from that place of channeling cosmic awareness. Now, what's always intrigued me and interested me is that when cosmic awareness says certain things, a day or two later, I'll hear from some other source the very thing that cosmic awareness just spoke of. So that helps me understand, okay, it's not always right. It never claims to be 100% right, because if you understand that the future is not set, there are many timelines that you can experience, then you can also appreciate that when something that cosmic awareness has spoken of does come through or come true, then it gives it more credence. For example, it might have been this one in March that you heard or whatever. Cosmic awareness spoke of false flags and spoke that in this very crucial time from the middle of March until basically October, this would be a time frame when the ones in power were going to try their hardest to really manipulate humanity into that final place of subjugation through the events such as the wars in the Middle East, such as false flag bombings of airports like in Belgium or the events in Paris. And awareness spoke to this. And the very next day, Belgium happened, okay? And it's like when you start understanding this is one of the ways they manipulate consciousness. David Icke has a very good way of explaining that. You probably have heard this. Maybe many of your listeners have heard this. He calls it problem, reaction, solution. So the powers that be create something, do something. This causes the old knee-jerk reaction, oh, help us, save us, do something. And then they bring forward, they being again the powers that be or these elites, they bring forward the solution that they already had planned in the first place. But they could not have ever pulled off if they just introduced the solution. So this is how false flag events work. They create a situation, they get their crisis actors in, they set the stage in advance. There's always events when there's going to be something that's going to happen where there's some exercise or maneuver is happening. Then they host the event. You get all these crisis actors saying, oh my God, this happened. My friend was shot right in front of me, or the gun was held at my head, or whatever, and people believe it. They buy into it. It's absolute the truth. What they're told is what they believe. And what they're told is actually a bunch of lies. Just like the most recent, this plane that was shot down over the Mediterranean. We don't know what that is, but I can almost guarantee you that that too is a false flag. It is not what they're telling us it is. And I think what you have to develop, and this is one thing that awareness has said over and over, I'm going to be a bit crude here. He said, develop your BS detector. Because when these events happen, the first thing is you've got to feel it from your gut. Is this true? Or is there something about that just doesn't ring true to me? And if it doesn't ring true to you, then you are aware there is something else happening. That's where you ask your questions. That's where you open the doors. Don't close them. Go on the internet. There's lots of sites like yours, for example, Rex, where information is being passed on that can help understand the very things that we're experiencing right now, the manipulations that they are doing to create their solutions. They've already got it all written up, folks. They know where they want to take humanity so that they can come through as the victors in the long run. Does that make any sense to you?
Oh, it certainly does. And, you talk about this cosmic awareness and this channeling that you do. Let's talk about that. I mean, what does that consist of?
Well, that is a good question, Rex. What does it consist of? I used to think that the way I could channel, first of all, I better explain that cosmic awareness calls itself the force of consciousness that spoke through such as Edgar Cayce, Jesus, Buddha. It is a high level of conscious awareness or a high level of consciousness that comes from the 12th dimension. Now, we are on the 3rd dimension. Supposedly beyond us, of course, are the 4th, 5th, all the way up to the 12th. But a way I've always understood this is that we are focused personalities. You, me, every human being is a focused personality. Now, we have heard many times the example of the pyramid of power. And at the very tip top, the eye is, let's say, the Archons. And then you have their minions below them. Okay? Now, let's use that same pyramid type projection, but let's flip it over. What if we are the pinpoint down at the bottom, that which I call the focused personality? And what if there are layers and stages that every time you go to the next layer, it's more comprehensive? So when we go into 4th or 5th, we are now becoming part of a collective consciousness. And then that collective consciousness steps to another dimension level, and it's part of a greater collective and a greater collective. So it's therefore my understanding that by the time you get to the 12th stage or 12th dimension, that collective consciousness, which is one step under that which is divine source consciousness or the Godhead, that it is of such a nature that it has comprehension of the many layers and levels below. And I have a direct access to that. I used to think that I had to go up to the 7th, and cosmic awareness came down from the 12th to the 7th dimension, and I channel. I've actually developed a completely different concept now. I actually almost would say I don't channel. I actually simply blend in and merge with the energy of my consciousness that is cosmic awareness, so that it speaks through me. That's why it has asked for me to refer to myself as the voice of cosmic awareness, because it's actually speaking through me. And I can go into that stage and that state of consciousness very quickly. And then I just step aside. As I often describe it actually as I go into the back seat and I let cosmic awareness drive the car and try not to interfere too much as a backseat driver. But anyway, so this information comes through me. And when I step into that role and allow the flow of information, it is a most amazing experience as to what I'm actually receiving. I mean, you might get a small, simple question. And when I get that question and awareness energy is flowing through me, it's not the small question. It's this immense thing with this and that and that and this all involved. And it pulls this strand and pulls that, and it produces a tapestry of the many strands. And that's the force of consciousness that is cosmic awareness that comes through me. Does that explain it?
I think that's good. And have you ever done something like that on air where you've actually made contact and been able to give information directly from source?
Oh yeah, directly from cosmic awareness. Absolutely, I do it all the time. Actually, I have done it with Alexander Mitters. I've done it with a few others where I've done it on a live interview where I just let awareness come through and speak. When I started, and as I said, I've developed this skill. I'm not the same channeler I was when I started 10 years ago. Now it's much more natural. Now it's like me speaking, but it's still different. A different way that awareness speaks through me. There is a difference. But when I started, it was more automated. It was almost robotic. But that was simply because I had a perception of how it should look. And as I've let go of those perceptions, as I've let go of the expectation of what it should be, then it's been allowed to develop into something much, much more natural. And I can step into that state of consciousness fairly quickly and be available then. I do a monthly conference, for example, a conference call rather, with the members of our site, of our website, and every month they have an opportunity to phone in, and we have, it's a worldwide thing, so people are phoning in from all over the world, and they'll ask Cosmic Awareness different questions, and I'll channel the information for Cosmic Awareness, or Cosmic Awareness will speak to these issues, and it's all spontaneous. If I do it on air, same thing. I'm just open, questions are presented, and awareness just comes through. So,
that's really cool. We had Alexandra Metters on with us at the Leak Project just about a week ago, and she sure is a fun lady to talk to, has some amazing energy, and is doing some just great work out there in California. And
absolutely.
so, very good soul.
We know her well. Nice lady. Like her a lot. I consider her a good friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't know her real well, but I certainly consider her a friend as well. And we just click like that. So, what I was wondering maybe if you could do for us, Will, before we closed out tonight too, is maybe you could do that with us here at the Leak Project. Give us some information or something that might be really important for our audience. I mean, we're just like sponges here for knowledge, and maybe you can throw some gems out for us.
Sure, why not? I'm definitely willing to go there if you give me a minute to make my connections.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
And one thing I do, I will point out, is that I usually close my eyes when I'm doing the work. Okay. So,
that's great.
Okay, just give me a moment here. That which is cosmic awareness is available and has already been participating in today's session. However, as the request was made for it to speak more directly, that this awareness is available at this time for this service, that it would ask you, Rex, to ask your question.
What is going to happen this year that might cause global or large-scale opportunities?
It would depend, of course, on what one refers to as opportunities. As you discussed with Will earlier, often events that are tragic in nature at the time when they occur are not considered to be opportunities. And yet later on, when one has hindsight and a moment to reflect on such events, they can be seen as opportunities. That this awareness says that this is an extremely important time, for there are many opportunities that are about to present themselves. But those who will experience the opportunities, if they cannot raise their consciousness as to how they interpret the opportunities, might see these events as catastrophes, not at all what one would wish for. Your own country, the United States of America, is seen to be in a position where there are many energies that are very dark and negative that are occurring at this time, that there are energetic plans for those in power to create events of a disastrous nature that would give an opportunity for these ones to declare martial law. That which is the formula of problem, reaction, solution is very much being played out at this time in your nation, but also globally as well. If there was an event that happened in the next several months in the United States that could collapse your economy or your government, would you be able to see it as a great opportunity to bring to an end that which has been a lie and a deceit? Or would you see it as a tragedy and be victim to that tragedy, believing all that is spoken of it, believing that to declare martial law, for example, is the way to go, and there is no choice? This is a time of great choice. It is a time to realize that what you believe in, what you hold to be true, is more likely to be manifested and present to you the experience of your life as that which is a questioning of that which is presented. You must question everything at this time. You must allow that which is a higher perception and trust and faith to guide you at this time, so that if it is so that an event occurs in your nation or globally that is of a major nature, that you will not be sucked into the vortex of fear and panic that many will go into, that many are observing right now, that the world seems to be becoming even madder and crazier than it was previously, and that this is that whirlpool that is spinning almost out of control, that one needs to also remember that as a hurricane passes, there is that calm at the eye of the hurricane, at the center of the vortex of wild energies. That it is important to remember to place yourself in the eye of the hurricane as it is all around you, rather than be in the tumultuous winds of the hurricane itself. As the events unfold, the possible events that unfold, do not succumb to them. Stay in the eye. Stay in the place of sacred neutrality. Hold that this is that which is necessary to effect changes, that which is an opportunity, even if it presents itself at first as a catastrophe. Know that you are spirit, and as spirit you draw the experiences of your lifetime to you. In fact, this awareness would even say that you designed your life to have certain experiences in this lifetime. If one can accept that, if one can accept they have far greater control in their lives when one has their spiritual alignment and connection, then one will see that their lives are not tragedies, but rather great opportunities, no matter whether the opportunities arrive at a very personal level, a national level, or a global level. Does this answer your question sufficiently?
You know, it does, and one thing that I probably should have asked even before this, if I may, and I know that many of our listeners are certainly wondering this also, who's going to win this year the presidential elections in America?
Does it matter? For it is all a phony event. It is all set up to distract Americans. This awareness can point out that both candidates are not stellar. One is a woman who has committed criminal acts and yet is running for president. The other is a billionaire who has his own self-interest at heart. And yet both are presented as the future to America. You must also then understand that both are working for the same master. And it does not really matter if it is Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump who becomes your next president, if this even happens. For there is also an alternate plan seen by this awareness, a possibility that if a major event already spoken of by this awareness as a possibility does occur and martial law happens, that the one who is president at this time, Barack Obama, will continue in that role until the national crisis is dealt with. This is a precedent that has already happened in American history when the Second World War occurred and Franklin D. Roosevelt stayed on as president, and the democratic process was not followed for a while. But if it is so, as one of the possible timelines, that Hillary Clinton is elected, then she, as one of the Illuminati families, the Rodran family, would not work for the best interests of Americans, even if many think that the woman, that electing a woman, will be the best thing for America. As it stands, Donald Trump is basically there to create a situation in America that many Americans will be afraid of him becoming their president because of some of the radical and ridiculous things he has said in the past. He is actually there more to promote the vote to Hillary Clinton, because the alternative, Donald Trump as president, is unacceptable for many mainstream Americans. It would be a way of distracting people by giving them a choice of that which is the lesser of two evils. But that this awareness would remind all that simply because it is the lesser of two evils does not mean it is a better solution. That when one is choosing between this evil or that evil, one is still choosing to accept evil as the way one's life is dominated and controlled. And that the lesser of two evils still means that it is evil, no matter which candidate eventually becomes your president. In the end, perhaps the way forward is to not support either, and to hold that new solutions must present themselves. New, true politicians of integrity and impeccability must be found, and the old corrupt system that is completely controlled and manipulated will be scrapped for a new way of bringing forward the leaders of your nation.
Nice. Well, yeah, I mean, this is some interesting times that we live in, certainly, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be, I certainly feel that those are two sides to the same coin, and that if you're at that level in politics, on TV, you're just an actor. You know, I mean, it seems like a lot of people are really standing behind Trump as being the savior for America and the overall Make America Great Again. And if that's really his intentions, fantastic. But I've heard it all before, and it seems like as soon as one of these guys gets into office, they have to do what they're told, and it's usually the opposite of what they say they're going to do before they get in there. So I would strongly recommend that our audience that has an opportunity to listen to this podcast, if you'd like to know more about Will and what he has to offer, please check out rainbow-phoenix.com. You have multiple opportunities there and things you can check out, good information and testimonials. So this has been great. Will, I really appreciate you coming on here with this Elite Project.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I also would like to mention that we are actually working on a brand new website. The address you have given is good because they'll go to that site, and when that new website is launched, maybe next week, they'll be automatically redirected there. But yeah, it's going to be there, and it's even more audience friendly or available to people when they come to the new website. So I invite people to come and have a look at this rather wonderful website that my beautiful wife and a good friend have designed, and just open up to the kind of information that's there for you to look at.
Oh, fantastic. And it looks like you're also on Facebook and YouTube, correct?
Yes, that's right. That's right. We have a presence there. Yeah.
That's great.
It's been an interesting journey, that whole thing of constructing websites and stepping into this arena and everything. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey.
Absolutely.
I think that's what's really important, Rex, is we have to understand this can be the most marvelous adventure or it can be the most horrible nightmare. And really what always defines it is how you look at it, how you hold it, and what you hold to be the bigger truth. And we're at a very exciting time now where we have the opportunity to jump forward into a whole new beginning of a reality that is, excuse me, that is quite unlike the reality we've been experiencing for the last few thousand years. And that's exciting. It's absolutely amazingly exciting.
Right on. Well, Will, it's been great to talk to you. I appreciate you coming on here with us at the Leak Project. And I'd also like to recommend our audience check out our website if you haven't already, folks. leakproject.com. I think we're up to over 200 full-featured podcasts there now. We're adding them every single day. We're also going to update the site with articles, links, information you won't be able to find anywhere else. And like Will says, be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Good night.